Hi, hello. This is a little bit different than usual because everything's such a mess in here. Those are just towels. I'm at the clinic. Because Easter holidays has been a little bit hectic with the kids being home, and I really wanted to make a video about how breathing can affect your training for this week's email, and I just didn't have the capacity. So I thought, you know what? I will go live because I can just talk and it's done. And then I can send it out to everybody who's subscribed. If you're not subscribed to my email list already, I'll put a link in the description for this once I've finished, because then you get notified when I release new videos. I share old videos and other tips that don't go into the YouTube channel. However, today we are talking about breathing mechanics and how it can affect your training if your breathing mechanics are less than ideal. So this might be a bit in depth. So if you want to grab a cup of tea, I have some peppermint and I got this new mug. Isn't it cute? It is pearlescent and it was £2.50. So I'm drinking my tea out of this today. And we're going to get into it. So if you are new to me, if you've not met me before, my name is Catherine. I'm the founder and principal therapist of LSM Clinic in East London. And our goal is to help people enjoy their favorite day-to-day activities and daily life pain-free or as close to it as possible. And we do that by looking at mechanics and how you can take care of yourself better and how you can be more in balance. Now, the way that we do that on this channel is by sharing information about how the body works and ways that you can incorporate that self-care into your day-to-day life so that you can feel better, hopefully. And in April, I've been talking about breathing in my emails. And last week we talked about like general breathing mechanics. And this week I'm specifically talking about breathing and your training. Now, it probably seems really obvious to say this, but breathing is very important for training. Why is this? Because our body uses oxygen to help release energy stores. And if we don't use oxygen to create energy, we are using stored glycogen, and that is a less effective way of creating energy. So when we're training, especially if we're training for like an event or something, one of the things that we are doing is we're trying to improve the way that our body, that our muscles process oxygen, and we're trying to improve the percentage of energy that we're creating using oxygen versus using anaerobic energy production, which is like lactic acid producing, etc. Now, if there's anything that I reference here that you'd like more information on, let me know in the comments and I will add a link to the description, right? Because all of this stuff, this is kind of like background stuff. But if it's the first time you've heard of it and you want more information, I'm very happy to just Google a couple of good links for you and put them in the description. So when you're training, you're trying to increase your VO2 max, you're trying to increase your lactate threshold and improve your aerobic capacity, right? But all of that is dependent on you getting oxygen into your body, which is where your breathing comes in. Now, anybody who's ever done any training or exercise knows that after you are doing some sort of hard training or exercise, you're breathing really heavily, right? Because your body wants more oxygen. It is like automatically aware that it wants more oxygen. So it's trying to get more by increasing how much you breathe, right? Now, obviously, if you breathe too quickly, that's not getting in to your blood. So sorry, I just was like, do I go off into a tangent about how the gaseous interchange works in the lungs? But I feel like, I don't know, that might be a bridge too far. Anyway, so the way that we take air in is our muscles contract. I think mostly contract. I'm not sure if any of them relax, to allow our lungs to expand, to create a vacuum that our lungs expand into, and that pulls air into our lungs. And then things relax and come down, and then the rib cage and hopefully the diaphragm pushes to make the lungs smaller, which then expels the air, right? So the thing that we need is we need the area in our rib cage to expand as much as possible to allow air in. And then we need all of those things to relax to push the lungs small enough so that most air possible goes out. And if we can't do that, we're not getting enough oxygen. And that means that our body is working harder to try and get the oxygen into the body. Our muscles are pushing harder. So let's talk about the mechanics of that at rest and then how that translates into training. So when you breathe at rest, your diaphragm is like a dome. Now, I go into more detail on this on another video, which is the diaphragm on the month video. But ideally, your diaphragm is relaxed. It's a dome, and then it contracts to bring the diaphragm down, which creates space for the lungs, right? I'm just going to have a little sip of tea. Okay. Your diaphragm can also be used to support your core stability. So sometimes it will be tight from that. Sometimes it will be tight because it's been overworking to try and pull down. A lot of people don't breathe with their diaphragm. A lot of people breathe with their accessory muscles. So your primary breathing muscle is the diaphragm. It's supposed to contract to create space in the lungs because it goes from being a dome under your ribs to coming down and creating more space from here to the bottom of the ribs. And then it contracts and comes back up, or relaxes and comes back up, and then helps to smush the air out. Another primary breathing muscle is the intercostals, which are the muscles in between the ribs, especially the lower ones. Now, obviously, breathing is very important. So our body has a lot of extra muscles that it uses to help increase our lung capacity when we need more. That is the scalenes, which are attached to the ribs and pull the rib cage up. The intercostals, which are between all of the ribs that help expand and contract or compress the rib cage, and the abdominal muscles. I bet you didn't know that part of the job of the abdominal muscles as accessory muscles of respiration are to push the air out, right? So our abdominals contract and then they can push air out. What happens a lot of the time is that people get into the habit where they're mainly using their accessory muscles of respiration and not so much the primary muscles at rest. So then that means when you exert yourself, when you're training, when you're going for your runs, for your marathon training or cycling or, whatever exercise you're doing, because you're already as a baseline using those accessory muscles of respiration, there's not really space for extra. But your body still wants that extra air. So then those muscles have to work even harder. Now, one of the things that we see a lot in clinic is that a tight muscle, like a really tight muscle, is often not a strong muscle. And what that means is that somebody's muscle is really tight. They almost don't have space for contraction, right? Because it's already so short. When they try to contract it, they can't. So they don't have the strength that they could. And so then when we release the muscle is stronger because it has more space to contract. So if your accessory muscles of respiration are all the time working to breathe for you at rest, and then they're super tight, then your lungs don't really have a good chance of expanding and I want to say contracting, but they're not contracting like muscles, right? They're just getting smaller if all of the muscles are tight. So first of all, if all of the muscles are tight, they can't relax to let the air out. As an example, if your diaphragm is supposed to relax into a dome and flatten here, so there's like that much space. Let's say, just as an example, I don't know if this is like actually how much space there is, but from here to here is the difference that you can get in your oxygen, right? In the air that comes into your lungs. Because if your lungs are starting like this much space, and the diaphragm contracts to give you that much space, and then it relaxes to push that much out, that's the amount of air you're getting. That's the difference. Does that make sense? So what happens if your diaphragm is tight? Even if you're trying to breathe with your diaphragm, if your diaphragm, instead of starting here and contracting down to here, if it's starting here and contracting to here, you can see there's much less space. It's very hard for you to push the air out. Now, what will often happen when people can't relax the diaphragm because the diaphragm is tight is that the abdominal muscles will engage to try and push the air out. So if you think about your abdominal muscles, they can relax to allow the diaphragm to come down and push the organs out. Then they can push in everything, which would make it go up, which would force space to close and force air out. And then that theoretically creates more space coming in, which doesn't always happen. So you can see, hopefully, by the way that I'm describing it, that there's loads of compensation that happens when you're not breathing ideally, like when you're not breathing at rest with your diaphragm. And then your accessory muscles are overworked. So then they don't really have anything extra to give when you need the extra air capacity. Not to mention, like, not even talking about the restrictions that happen when you have these muscles being tight, how it affects your ability to rotate, how it affects your neck movement or your head position, which they can have a knock-on effect to your shoulders. Not even to mention the fact that there's an accessory muscle of respiration in the lower back called the QL that will hold the ribs down to allow to create more space. And so you can imagine your body wants oxygen. And so if it has to work that much harder to get breath in, one, it's not going to get enough breath. So you're not going to feel as energized as you could because you're not getting as much oxygen as you could. And two, it's using a lot of energy because you're having to push and pull against muscles that are already tight when they shouldn't be, right? I don't know if you, say, for example, you're a runner, if you've ever had a massage on your legs and then you notice how much lighter your legs feel after, right? Because all that muscle tension in your legs made them heavier. That was a lot of resistance. And releasing the muscles in the legs meant that they felt lighter because there was less resistance from the muscle tension. So that's what you can get when you work on your breathing muscles. And that's why we specifically, everybody at the clinic knows how to do breathing release for breathing muscles. And we also have like a specific breathe easier session that focuses on the breathing muscles. I'm just going to check my notes quickly to make sure I didn't forget anything so far. Yep, we got that. Diaphragmatic breathing, we got that. We got the support muscles. Overuse makes muscles tight. Yeah. So, yes. So I'll just tell you what I said, right? We have your muscles, your breathing muscles create a vacuum for your lungs to expand to take in air. The smaller the expansion, the less air you're getting in, right? So the less difference between your small state and your expanded state of your lungs, the less actual air is physically getting into your lungs. Diaphragmatic breathing is what you should be doing when you're at rest, right? Not when you're training. When you're training, that's where your support muscles are supposed to kick in. However, a lot of us don't breathe with our diaphragm or primarily with our diaphragm when we're at rest for various reasons. And so then our support muscles take over. Our abs push in to push air out of our body. Our neck lifts our ribs up. Our intercostals are opening and closing our ribs. Our lower back is pulling down. These are all trying to create that difference, right? Because it's not just about how much you can expand in, it's are you pushing the air out? Overuse makes those accessory muscles tight and less able to do their job. So then when you need them, they are overworked and they don't have the capacity to do as much as they could do if they were relaxed and not already tight. And then your body has to work that much harder when you're trying to get air in. So that is how, I remember the last thing I wanted to say. Hold on. Because it's always about, so what's the solution, right? If this is what happens, what's the solution? Now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that all of those muscles that I talked about aren't tight and overworking, and you want to retrain yourself to breathe primarily with your diaphragm when you're at rest, okay? I really want to emphasize this because when you are training and when you are pushing and when you need that extra air, that is exactly what those accessory muscles are for. Exactly. When you are at rest is when you want to do diaphragmatic breathing primarily. When you are training, you want those accessory muscles to be loose so that they can give you that extra capacity that your body needs as it's trying to get additional oxygen to feed to your muscles to help you create energy in your body. So there's a couple things that you can do. Obviously, we can help you at the clinic. We will do diaphragm release. We will check your intercostals. We'll check your neck muscles and your QL and your abdominals. We can check your breathing mechanics. Are you inhaling with your diaphragm or other muscles? When you're exhaling, are you allowing your diaphragm to relax, or are your abs pushing in for your exhale? And that's actually something that you can test right now. If you take a breath in and then exhale, when you exhale, are you pushing that air out, or are you allowing that air to leave your body? Right? That's a distinction. Again, when you're training, you push the air out, right? That's fine. That's part of the abs job, is to help you get air in and out of your body. When you're at rest, you don't want that to happen. On your own, we have a pay what you can breathing visualization. And the way that I recorded this, it specifically helps you focus on your diaphragm and try to relax it while you're doing the visualization. So I'll include that in the description below if you want to buy that and work on that for yourself. And then other than that, I mean, you can look at yourself and go like, which muscles do I feel like are tight? Like, how does my diaphragmatic breathing feel? How do I feel like I'm breathing with my neck? Do I need to release my neck? Ultimately, if you can improve your at rest breathing, that's going to go a long way. And anybody that you can go to see who knows how to release the breathing muscles is good. Like if you're not in East London and you can't get to us, because they can be a bit tricky to release on your own, especially the diaphragm. Okay, so that is how your breathing mechanics affect your training. If you want to book with us, I'll put a link to book below. If you would like to have a session, be on our mailing list, you can be on the mailing list. If you have any questions, let me know in a comment. And I think that covers everything. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to say, like, please like this video if you found it interesting or useful. If you know somebody who might find it interesting or useful, please share it with them. Oh, and I keep forgetting. Like the one thing that I wanted to say that I keep forgetting to say is, what is the effect if you work on your breathing muscles, right? Because we've been doing this for a long time. So we've seen a lot of clients who have less than ideal breathing mechanics, you're training for things. And so what do they say when we release the breathing muscles? So most often people say they feel more energetic during their training, like they have more energy, they don't fatigue as easily. People also say they feel like we've put a bubble in their stomach because it's so much easier for them to breathe. So they don't get, like if they've had a sore neck from running or if they've had a sore lower back, that can help. Now, sometimes sore lower back is from your psoas being tight, your hip flexors. This is not always going to help with the lower back. And sometimes the neck is tight because we're lifting our shoulders. But often they say they feel lighter in their upper body. They feel like they have more energy. And I think that's partly because they're getting a better supply of oxygen and partly because all of those muscles aren't having to work as hard to try to get the breath in. So a lot of people won't think about like how are my breathing mechanics while I'm training for an event, but I would strongly recommend that you do because it can make a huge difference overall. And yeah, so I guess that's everything. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment if you have any questions or want any more resources. And I will be back next week with about how your breathing mechanics affects your head and neck. And I'll either have a chance to pre-record it and edit it, or I'll just go live like I did today. So have a great day, whatever you're doing, whenever you watch this, and I will see you later. Bye.